It's not the workout. It's actually the recovery. Too many times I have people think that they're growing when they're doing their workout. That's when they're actually growing because they see their muscles get bigger due to hypertrophy and what have you. That's not when really doing your growth. Your growth actually happens in your recovery, and it happens when you're feeling that soreness. So what is that soreness? What is all that? And not only that, but as far as recovery is concerned, how does age affect your recovery? Talking about DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness, today on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast
with Garrett Williamson.
Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Hey, good day and welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Garrett Williamson, president of Personal Edge Fitness. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I know right in that introduction I threw a bunch of stuff out. The topic that I'm covering today does hit on a lot of things that I'm very interested in. And that's why I kind of did that shotgun approach in the introduction. I promise you I will bring it all to a head. But first thing, let me tell you how to get in touch with the show. And as always, I'm going to thank all of you that have contacted us via Twitter. We've had people contact us via the website. That's been very popular. And also through Facebook, asking us questions and making comments. We had somebody that commented that the July 4th weekend is when, right after the July 4th weekend was when the podcast dropped about returning from vacation and how to get yourself back after getting back. And we had quite a few folks either contact us about it or make comments on Facebook and Instagram about how timely that was. So thank you. I really appreciate that. If nothing else, I'd love to get that thumbs up. If you do have any questions about this show or any others, please contact us at area code 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. You can also reach me at my email address, which is Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. Now, if you'd rather use Twitter, you can contact us at Team PE. You can also reach out to us through our website at personaledgefitness.com and our Facebook page, which is Personal Edge Fitness. The reason I'm talking about this subject today is that this comes up about once every 2 years, sometimes once a year, but at least once every 2 years. There's an article that comes out and it starts talking about general soreness, about the breaking down of muscle and recovery, and they always like to go into the area of what we call DOMS, D-O-M-S. It's delayed onset of muscle soreness. Back when I first studied DOMS, which was in, gosh, Lord, that was in my bachelor's degree, and so somewhere around 1989-90. Was the first time I'd actually read about DOMS and the study of DOMS, and it was really fascinating. There's I wish I remember which university held it, because there's been several studies on delayed onset of muscle soreness, but this was the one that really kicked it off. And it was a great study because it talked about the lingering effects of soreness involved with working out, because so many people when we're training will tell me, good Lord, when it's my arms or the simpler muscles, I have soreness like the next day. But if my legs, it's usually like 2 days until I have the soreness. And that's what the DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness study, was about. But what I was saying a minute ago is about every year or 2 years they bring up, you'll see this hit the general public. And this is an article, it's actually reprinted in our local newspaper, written by Jill Adams, taken off the wire from Washington Post. And it talks about how should you deal with sore muscles, should you rest or keep moving. And usually the articles are something like that. Basically talk about the same thing. They talk about delayed onset of muscle soreness, and they'll find pretty much any sport medicine researcher out there is going to be able to speak intelligently about DOMS. And of course they have a couple people quoted in this one, and that's what they're basically talking about. They're describing what delayed onset of muscle soreness is and what's going on there and how that relates to growth. There's some things that I love, and I'm gonna read some quotes out of here which are fantastic. But there's misleading information, as with most of these articles, because they're trying to summarize and write it for the general public. But I'm on the other end of it. I have basically John Q. Public, when they find out that I'm a personal trainer, asking questions, and I can tell that they've been misled by these articles inadvertently. I really don't think that anybody's out to mislead anybody. I wouldn't say that's true throughout the press, but in these articles, I'm not so sure they're really out to mislead anybody, and even the researchers especially, I don't think are out to mislead anybody. But they're speaking to the general public, so they've got to speak in generalities, which can be very confusing. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute, because there's a particular topic that is near and dear to my heart that I'm going to cover today, because I mentioned it in the introduction, and it deals with, is the soreness worse when you age, and is your recovery slower when you age? And we address that topic today, and I'm going to clear some things up for you, which are pretty interesting. Delayed onset of muscle soreness, like I say, is the recovery. To put it very simple, and I'm going to see if I can read a quote from here so that I can back myself up from somebody else that studies this, but any good exercise physiologist is going to know when we're lifting weights, we're doing resistance training, we're going for a good run, anything that tends to make your muscles sore. It's probably a good rule of thumb way to look at that. Soreness isn't required for a good workout by any means, but speaking to the general public, speaking in generalities, if you go for a long run and your muscles are sore the next day, that's like doing a resistance workout. And it's not a resistance workout I'd recommend for your legs, but you've torn muscle tissue. If you're doing resistance training, you feel a little sore the next day. No, it's not necessary to feel sore, but if you feel a little bit sore next day, that's due to tearing those muscle fibers down. And what you're feeling, and I've said this many times, what you're feeling when you have soreness is you're feeling the recovery process. It is not lactic acid. That's a very popular belief that we're feeling lactic acid. Lactic acid dissipates. It's something that when you tear a muscle fiber, lactic acid is released. It's a byproduct of the muscle tear, and it's actually a safety mechanism developed by your body, which I've told you many times, the human body is the most intelligent machine you'll ever encounter. And that lactic acid causes a burning sensation that sends a message to your brain. It's where you sense pain, and it's basically telling you, stop, cut it out. But that lactic acid, that actual chemical that's really dissipates. It dissipates within 25 to 30 seconds, which is why if you've worked out with us, we'll usually take 25 to 30 seconds rest between an exercise and repeating the same exercise again. Now, we'll go and do another exercise that doesn't affect that body part, but we take a rest because we're waiting for one thing, lactic acid to dissipate. The other thing we're waiting for is the ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is more or less the gasoline for the muscles, to restore. And so the soreness that you're feeling has nothing to do with lactic acid. What it has to do is that you've got torn tissue there. I mean, you have a cut on your arm. The next day, you can be sore. Why? Because you've torn skin. Well, you've got torn fibers. So you've got pain going on there from the torn fibers, but part of the pain, even when you've got a cut, same situation, when you tear muscle fibers, you've also got a lot of workers in that area repairing it. And they're tearing off the little rough edges of the fibers and trying to get things to join back together. All that, you're feeling all that. That's a little bit of pain involved with it. And those little workers are actually white blood cells. The white blood cells are actually in there repairing the muscle. And the most amazing thing about it, to me, is the fact that your body is smart enough to not only repair it, but to take what you give it. That's incredibly important. It's to take what you give it and make it stronger. That's what's amazing. I mean, we think it's phenomenal when we have a car that somebody has had that's a classic car and they've had it for 60 years and it's in immaculate shape, looks like it just came off the showroom floor, and we think that's amazing. Well, that car can't do all that itself. That car gets affected by the elements, what have you, has to be protected, has to be taken care of by someone. Well, in the case of the machine, which is your body, it does it itself. It not only repairs the fender, it makes it stronger. That's what's amazing about the human body. But let's get back to that soreness. Let me see if I can find you a quote like I was talking about to back up what I'm saying here as far as the time limit, the fact that there's a delayed amount of time and the repair process going on. This is a quote from Keith Barr, professor of physiology and membrane biology at the University of California at Davis, explains that muscles are made up of muscle fibers connected to each other by proteins called dystrophins, which function like rivets. When the muscle is accustomed to work, the rivets help the individual muscle fibers work as a well-choreographed team to move the body. Without training, however, Barr says these connections are weak. I'm going to stop there. Without training, these connections are weak. Okay, that's a generalization. When you work it, it doesn't automatically get stronger. What he's talking about, the fact is that, let's say you're going to try to make that bicep stronger. So you're going to lift weights and you're going to tear muscle fibers in that bicep. And so your body's going to repair that bicep stronger. Well, if you stop working that bicep, in other words, next week you don't work it, and the next week after that you don't work it, and the week after that you don't work it, your body says there's no reason to maintain that muscle. That problem we had earlier, the problem being exercising and breaking down the muscle tissue, isn't around anymore. We don't need that muscle. Let's cannibalize it and use it for energy. Exactly what your body does. Let me give you a comparison. I live on the Gulf Coast, as you can see, another beautiful summer day out here. But one of the most dangerous times, pretty much the most dangerous time to live on the Gulf Coast happens to be in the late summer, early fall, because it's hurricane season. Well, as you can see, I live here on the water in downtown Dog River, and I'm looking at my house that's behind the camera here, and I know that come September when we have a storm brewing and the weather prognosticators tell us that the storm may come right up Mobile Bay, Well, then I'm going to reinforce my windows. I'm going to put boards up on my windows. I'm going to make my windows stronger than they are right now because I know a storm's coming. And I may leave them up through the hurricane season because another one might come, and then come October, November, well, I can tell you right now, we're not going to have any more storms. And so just like our body breaks down that muscle tissue that it's built up because, hey, there's no more challenges here, I'm going to take the wood off my windows. I don't need to reinforce. I don't need that strength anymore because obviously that challenge that I have is not coming. And your workouts are a challenge to your muscle. Now, what he says here is that without training, however, Barr says these connections are weak. They're not are weak. They're taught to weaken. Without training, they're taught to weaken. Your body uses that muscle for energy. But he goes on. So when you do exercise, they slide and they shear. These rivets he's talking about in the muscles. The rivets pull at the membranes, making tiny tears. This causes a number of chemical events in the muscle, including dysregulated fiber contractions, an influx of immune cells, white blood cells, and swelling and pressure buildup. That's the hypertrophy that you see. You know, you get finished with a good bicep workout. Boy, that bicep grown a good, couple of inches or what have you. You're real impressed by it. You go flex in front of the mirror. That is swelling that's going on. And it's okay. Hey, look, with all due respect, I'm a red-blooded male. I've done it myself. That's temporary. That's swelling. That's what's going on. The repair process has begun. Those immune cells that he was talking about, that's the white blood cells. They're coming into the rescue. Now, that is very normal, and you'll have that process, depending on the size of the muscle, go on from 24 to 72 hours. Now, I know it's a heck of a range, but the reason I'm giving you a range is not just to speak in generalities, but it varies person to person, not because of your age. It varies from person to person because of what muscle are we talking about? How big is that muscle? How recently has that muscle been broken down? Is it used to being broken down in training and what have you? How hard did we break it down? How intense was the workout? Now, intense in your mind versus true intensity, that's two different things. So that's why we say we have that range, 24 to 72 hours. Typically the larger the muscle is, the more it can take, the more it can handle, the longer it takes for that full repair process to get going. If you've got a small city and it has a hurricane come through really quick, well, you're going to have quick action on that small city. If Pascagoula, God forbid, is hit by a hurricane, if you have the troops come in, you can take care of that city really quick. But if New Orleans, much larger city, gets hit, it's going to take a long time to get to all those areas. That's the same thing with a large muscle. Small muscle, you may feel that soreness that afternoon. Larger muscle could take some more time. Now, when I spoke in the introduction, how does age affect this? This is what I'm going to show you, yet another example of where these generalities, and I don't believe the researcher is trying to mislead you, but maybe the journalist doesn't want to listen to all the full details. He just wants the answer. Just give me that answer, and I'll write it in there. The problem is people take that answer, don't know the full story, and draw ridiculous conclusions. And one of the conclusions happens to be killing us. Now, I'll show you what I mean. Give me a second. I've got to get back to my article here. Barr goes on. This inflammation, that's that hypertrophy I was talking about, is necessary to help you regenerate the injured muscle. Of course, hypertrophy is the white blood cells coming in doing the repair. When you're starting a new exercise program, you may have more painful days, and that's true. That's true because that has to do with the intensity level that you're working with, and it may be a beginner level, but that beginner level to your muscle is actually a medium level, so therefore you're going to have some more damage. You're going to feel a little more soreness. And that's going to feel less later on because, of course, that gets easier for you. Here's the part I was telling you about that I don't think the researcher is trying to mislead you, but I'm not sure if there's back to that situation if the journalist doesn't want to hear all of it. In addition, older people's, now this is not a quote, so this is written by the journalist. In addition, older people's muscles tend to undergo more damage than younger people. Still not quoting. So as you age, now it says, Barr says, this is a quote, you're more likely to get sore with exercise and the resulting DOMS is more extended. Now the only part that he quoted is, you're more likely to get sore with exercise and the resulting DOMS is more extended. That's his only quote. So he could have been asked, well, okay, what if you have somebody that's highly atrophied, that not only is highly atrophied, but they haven't been taking enough water in the majority of their life. They don't eat protein every meal, every day. Their lifestyle is that of being sedentary. If I ask that, then I could easily respond, you're more likely to get sore with exercise and the resulting DOMS is more extended. Here's the point I'm making. When they do these studies and they'll take a group of older people and they'll take people, younger people, and they'll put them through the same level of intensity exercises. They'll set it for what they think their fitness level is and what have you. And they'll run through the exercises, and they'll find out this older group seems to have the delayed onset of muscle soreness seems to be going on longer, and they seem to be in more pain than the younger group. And they quickly draw the conclusion, well, when time passes on a calendar, that just happens. What they don't look at, they totally disregard information that we have out there. We know it's out there. Over 72% of adults don't drink enough water. What does that got to do with it? Well, all the processes that go on in the body, especially developing muscle, rely on hydration, period. End of story. If you weaken the hydration, you lower the hydration, you're not going to repair as fast, period. The second thing is 46% of adults don't eat enough protein, and over 70% of seniors don't eat enough protein. Well, why is that important? Remember the white blood cells rushing in the hypertrophy stage, causing that inflammation, going to do that repair? Well, they're turning around. What are they repairing it with? They're not taking things off the white blood cell itself. They're grabbing materials to fix it. And what is the pile over here of materials? Well, that's protein. I don't care what any weekend certified health nutritionist tells you. That's not vegetables. That's not carrots. That is protein. That is protein. And I know vegetables have protein in them. You've heard me say this before. Unless you're supplementing a vegetarian diet, you're missing out on the amino acids you need to grow muscle. So this pile over here is protein. And in 46% of adults, there's not enough there. 72% of seniors, there's not enough there. Now, the problem is, in this quote here that I just did by Dr. Barr, whether he was saying this or not, or he was being misled, we are given the idea that it's time that caused that. That causes that. I'm going to remind you. I'll remind you something I've said several times. There's not one study on the face of the earth that proves that time passing on a calendar and time alone, you can't ignore these other factors, time alone causes you to deteriorate. It's a lie. And when it doesn't take into account these studies that I'm talking to you about, the ones that I'm sure that were used to possibly back up what they're saying here, they didn't look at their lifestyle. They didn't look at their mindset. They did not look at their nutrition. They did not look at their full activity level, past and present. If you look at all the factors, you're going to see that anybody that tells you that time passing on a calendar causes deterioration is a liar. By the way, yeah, I said that. Garrett Williamson. I'm at 5131 West I-65 Service Road North, Mobile, Alabama 36608, 251-341-0927. I'm there most days. DOMS is something actually fantastic, and I'm going to talk a little bit. Of course, I went down my road of age. You knew that was going to happen. But let me tell you something else about DOMS and about how to repair and what you should do to speed your recovery. They talk in this article, they talk about some brief studies that were done on foam rolling, and I'm a fan of foam rolling. I know enough about it, but my sport medicine athletic trainers on my staff actually know far more than I do, so I know enough to be dangerous. Would I recommend it? Yes, I would recommend it, but I recommend speaking to a professional that knows more about it and knows more about it than I do. We've got them on our staff. If you call us at our Mobile facility, 251-341-0927, or call us at our Eastern Shore facility, 251-651-0927. We'd be more than glad to speak to you about it. Contact us through the ways I told at the beginning of the show, and I'll tell you at the end of the show. Foam rolling, I do think is a good thing, but something I know for a fact, that age recovery, I argue, this is Garrett's opinion, I believe we're going to have studies done on this, and I believe I'm going to be proven true, but Garrett's opinion that if you speed circulation, which when they talk about foam rolling, they talk about increasing circulation. If you were to speed circulation, you can actually speed recovery. There may be studies out about that. I'm sorry that I have not done that research. I'm sure they're going to, because I argue that we are studying so much about recovery that we're going to actually start to get to a point where we can recover and break down a muscle a lot faster. So how do you speed circulation? Easy. Don't lift weights when you're sore. Not on that muscle. You can lift weights on other muscles, absolutely, but don't lift weights, don't do resistance training on that muscle. Instead, do something. Doesn't have to be something in that area, because when you speed circulation in your leg, you're speeding circulation everywhere. If you speed circulation in your toe, you're going to speed circulation everywhere. It's not an independent system. So go for a walk. Something low resistance. Do not get on an elliptical and jack it up with high intensity and work. No, absolutely not. Now, if you're working legs, if you've worked legs and they're sore, now you're working legs again. But move, increase circulation, go for an easy swim, recovery bike ride, a recovery elliptical, just a nice leisurely, go walk your dog. That will speed circulation, which will speed recovery, by the way, at every age. Listen, I kind of danced around a little bit on this subject, but if you have any more questions about it, I love speaking about this. Recovery is something very important to me, and of course, age and the ridiculous lie that that's what causes deterioration is something I love to talk to people about it. So if you're interested, please contact me to speak to me about it. Also, I want to let you know that I had somebody ask this, did not know that I do speaking engagements. I've spoken to 10 people, I've spoken to 300, and I've been doing this for over 15 years. My favorite topic is the live age. If you have a need for a speaker, more than glad to come speak about those topics and answer any questions you might have. You can reach me at area code 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. You can also reach me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com, which of course is our website and our Facebook page. Reach out to me via Twitter at Team PE. Folks, DOMS, D-O-M-S, delayed onset of muscle soreness, not something to be afraid of. You've got good things going on when you've got DOMS. It's not a bad thing. And I promise you, it is not affected by time on a calendar. Don't believe that myth. If you wanted to dispel the myths, come back here because we are dedicated to helping you reach your level of wellness. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.